Welcome, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining episode 3 of From the Ground Up, real-time issues and real-time solutions for MWBE businesses. This is a collaboration of Queen Strategy Partners, and I am excited that we're able to offer this resource to all of you in our MWBE community. My name is Dr. Stacie N.C. Grant. I'm joined by my co-host, Danielle Douglas, and our third partner, Nicole Valentine, Esquire. We came together because we saw an opportunity and a need for us to really provide solutions within the MWBE space. And this show is an extension of that collaboration and an opportunity for us to really have conversations and information that can help position MWBEs for success in the marketplace. So without further ado, we're going to get into the show, and Danielle Douglas is going to tell you a little bit about what we're discussing today.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy that you are here with us this morning. I guarantee you today is going to be a great show with a wealth of information. It was an outgrowth of last week's show. Last week, we talked about, does PPP really work for your business? And what other loan options are available for MWBE businesses? And during that discussion last week, one of the things that came out of it was business owners being bankable, and the fact that they need to address the 5 C's to be bankable. So today's topic is what every MWBE needs to know to be bankable. And so we will be discussing the 5 C's. Those 5 C's are cash flow, personal and business credit, character, and collateral. And I guarantee you, you will get a lot of information. We know that if you're not looking for capital right now during the coronavirus, at some point when you're thinking about growth in your business, capital will be an essential component of that. And so if you don't utilize this information now in the present, you will need it in the future. So we're excited again about providing this information to you. We have 2 great guests. Stacie is going to introduce Mary, and then I'll be following up introducing Teresa, and then we'll be moving forward with giving you impactful information.
Thank you, Danielle, and welcome again to everyone that's here. So she is no stranger to the show. I think we're going to have to just keep them around as a resource from the ground up, because these 2 guests are amazing. And you're not seeing her video right now, but we will work on making that happen, but you'll be able to hear her voice. Mary Olushoga is currently the Assistant Vice President and Senior Business Advisor at Pursuit Lending. And Pursuit Lending was created to assist, promote, and advance the business prosperity and economic welfare of the state of New York by providing loans to small businesses, including startups, early stage, and mature businesses, with a particular emphasis on minority and women-owned businesses. As an assistant vice president and senior business manager, she also manages the JP Morgan Chase Entrepreneur of Color Fund, where she oversees and develops an overall strategy to penetrate and spur economic development within those small businesses, originally in the Bronx, and it's expanded. And she accomplishes this goal by establishing partnerships with numerous corporations, local banks, and community development organizations. She has a resume that we would be here for 2 more shows if I read it all, but just an amazing individual with a wealth of information and a true desire to educate our community, particularly minority women-owned businesses, on how they can get access to capital. So Mary, welcome. We're giving you a virtual hug, and we'll let you say hello since everyone can't see you currently on screen.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much to Dr. Stacie and Danielle for inviting me once again to the show. I'm very excited to be here and to be part of the conversation. So thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'm going to kick it over to Danielle, who is going to introduce our second guest.
So I have the honor to introduce Dr. Teresa Martin, Esquire. Teresa helps her clients create financial legacies using her business acumen as an attorney and a business acceleration and profit optimization specialist. Her unique ability to work in diverse industries and multicultural environments gives her the agility to find unique opportunities for companies to significantly increase their revenue, profits, and market share. Teresa has been featured in Money Magazine. She is contributing author of Six Figure Magazine and a co-author of Amazon #1 bestseller, Entrepreneur on Fire, Conversations with Visionary Leaders with Barbara Corcoran, billionaire real estate mogul, and star of the hit ABC show Shark Tank. As the CEO of Generational Wealth Zone LLC, Teresa is perfectly positioned to help small business owners like yourself to realize their dream of building a multi-million-dollar business and achieve personal, financial, and professional freedom through her systematic marketing strategies and personal connections with many of the biggest names in the marketing world today. So Teresa, thank you again for joining us. We are excited to have you here with us, and we know, again, you as well as Mary will be providing a ton of valuable information for the guests today.
Thank you both, Dr. Stacie and Danielle, for inviting me and being back on the panel with Mary, who's absolutely awesome and amazing. I got my pen and paper ready to take notes from her too.
Thank you. What a wonderful honor.
Well, we're going to kick it off, and you all are just so amazing. We had to have you back, and Danielle found some information, and we're going to jump into the first question that all MWBEs, hopefully you heard this news.
So the first question is, since our last discussion, Magic Johnson announced that he and his partners will be contributing $100 million to provide capital to MWBEs under the PPP, the Protection Paycheck Loan Program. And so we want to know, will there be a special program for MWBEs to take advantage of this additional funding?
Mary, you want to kick that off?
Yeah, sure. So the PPP, so you're talking about the New York State Loan Fund, is that correct? The Forward program?
No, this is a different
program.
program.
About the Magic Johnson $100 million program that he's doing with MBE Capital.
Yes.
Right.
So this program was launched, or it was announced earlier in the week. And as Teresa alluded to, he will be contributing $100 million with his partners, but it will be under the guidelines of the current PPP loan.
Right. So it is my understanding, actually, that the funding comes from the government. That's my understanding of the loan. So it's my understanding that the funding comes from the government, but it's disbursed by his company, because as we discussed in the last show, that a disproportionate number of MWBEs did not receive PPP funding. And so his company and his team was able to receive some funding from the United States Small Business Administration. And so they will be working with that team to disperse loans, additional loans to MWBEs. The interest rate is going to be at 1%, which is just like every CDFI or every bank that's doing the PPP. But that's really my understanding of his program. So he's just working with the pipeline that already exists, or the value chain that already exists, but just helping to increase the access to MWBEs.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Teresa, do you want to add anything to that?
One of the things I want to say is kudos to Magic and his team.
Absolutely.
As you know, as we talked about, and Mary really, hit home last week. So for those who missed it, you gotta go back and listen, because that was like amazing. Like what she really mentioned about as far as that, the initial 349 billion, and then the additional 310 billion
Right.
that was put out there, and how, the Center of Responsible Lending, already indicated in their research that 90% of Black, Latino, Pacific Islander, Hawaiian Islander people, and 75% Asian American businesses have no access
Right.
to receive these funds because they have no relationship with banks and participating SBA lenders.
Right.
So if you don't have the relationships and they are the ones who are providing the funds, then you know that minority and MWBE business owners are already cut out, right? And so one of the things that I found interesting, and I don't know how they're gonna kind of recoup this, is when the CARES Act came into place, and it's a huge document, but when it came into place, they instructed the SBA to prioritize underserved and rural markets, right? But when that inspector went out to do his report, he found that the agency had not communicated this to the lenders. So if the report found that the SBA didn't require the demographics data and identify the borrowers, now we understand why, you know, the Lakers received, you know, money, and why Shake Shack received money, and, you know, all these companies, because they found that flaw in the SBA system. And so the fact that Magic and his team stepped in to fill that gap, that is amazing in and of itself. You know, however, like Mary said, it's still going to be under the guidelines under the PPP. So all the qualifiers still need to take place. You still need to make sure you have all your records and things in order. But I just wanted to just hit home on that and say kudos to Magic and his team for recognizing that, because I think it's phenomenal that, you know, $100 million that he is, you know, and the goal was to serve 100,000 businesses. So
right.
Which is phenomenal. And if you are fortunate enough to be in that pool now with Magic doing this, and, you know, all the different controls that are now in, to your point, that there wasn't a real system in place to make sure that other businesses could compete. If you do get the funding and you get this PPP and you're fortunate enough to be in that number, from last week, if I'm correct, it's only for 3 months, right? And that means after 3 months, you're still going to need some sources to get back on your feet. You might need some additional assistance with keeping your staffing that you are using this payroll protection for. So what other options and where are the other capital sourcing per se that you can get as an MWB after the 3 months, if you're fortunate enough to be in that number? Mary, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I strongly believe that this is not the time, and I've been telling all of my clients this. I have a portfolio of like easily over 500 clients that I work with, and I've been telling them to not rush the process, because the goal is not just to receive capital for your business, but to also take an assessment of what the consumer climate is like. And I think that data shows everywhere that people are still very nervous and very afraid to spend. You know what I mean? So people are still very afraid to go to the restaurants. People are still afraid of doing a lot of things that they usually did, you know, pre-COVID. And so if people are not spending, and if consumer trust is still very low, I don't think you should be going about receiving or going about trying to find funding yet. I think you should really take your time to really assess, especially if you're based in New York City, to really take that time and say, okay, how long will it take for the city, for example, to reopen? Try to take an assessment too of how long will it take for people to go back to trusting the way it was before. And then, like we talked about also from the last time, you know, and if I could tell your viewers to really go back to the last show, is how can I re-strategize and reassess what I'm doing in my business? Because a lot of things that worked pre-COVID might not work during COVID and post-COVID. So you have to really take an assessment. Do you have to redesign your restaurant? Do you have to redesign a lot of things? You know, how are you going to integrate new hygiene processes into your business, especially if you have a face-to-face type business where you're facing with the consumer? So I think it's very important to take into account those types of decisions before going after funding. Because if you go after the funding aggressively and people do not come in to spend, you're going to be in trouble and you're still liable for that loan. So it's important to, you know, really, this is a time for an assessment. And to be honest with you, and looking at what I'm seeing, a lot of business might not survive. I spoke with a client last week who owns a daycare company. And, you know, people do not trust daycare companies like they would before. You know, in terms of just coming in and having their kids there. Now you have to think about how do they clean that daycare company? Who is going to the daycare center? You know, does any of the staff there have COVID-19? You know, so there are all these issues. And more importantly, another issue too that I, you know, working with my clients last week is a lot of employees prefer to collect unemployment than to go in there to work. So I had a client with a daycare center and, you know, she received PPP and she put she had two staff on her PPP application, but those two employees do not want to come into work because both of them are diabetic. They don't want to be exposed to COVID and they're very nervous and afraid. And so they told her, yes, you've received PPP and we're part of your application. You know, she was able to identify that she had two staff, but we don't want to come in. We prefer to receive unemployment. So staff retention is also another issue that small businesses are going to have to face. You know, how do you retain your staff? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them coming in? So I think those issues are more important than going after financing, because if you go after financing, and like I said, the clients or the consumers are not coming in to spend, or you're having issues with staff retention, you're going to be on hook for that money. And how are you going to pay that back? So I don't think aggressively sourcing financing is the issue right now, but right now is an issue. Right now, the concern should be, how do I survive? That's the first thing. How do I survive? And two, how can I reassess my company or sort of re-strategize how I operate?
And Mary,
nodding her head. Oh, go ahead, Danielle.
I'm sorry, Stacie. Mary, the other thing I just want to jump in is that there will be a fourth stimulus package. And in that fourth stimulus package, what is being proposed is that with the PPP loan, that one, it's extended, that business owners have more than 8 weeks. The duration may be 12 weeks, it may be 24 weeks for them to be able to spend the monies. So that's the first thing. And then also what's also being considered is, does 75% have to be spent on payroll? And so do you suggest that maybe even with considering that, it would be beneficial to maybe hold off, not only for the reasons that you said, which are all very important reasons, but also to see what comes out of the new stimulus package?
Right, absolutely. So for now, the rules say you have to spend 75% of the PPP on payroll, right? So I know that policymakers, as a result of my relationship here at Pursuit, and a lot of policymakers have been trying to say, should 50% or less than 50% be spent on payroll, and the other half on, you know, rent, utilities, and other things like that. But that's yet to be determined. It's not been decided upon yet. And like, I think I said this in the last conversation as well, that, you know, there's a New York Times article that talked about how small business owners were very hesitant and afraid to spend PPP funding, just because, one, the loan forgiveness part, they're not exactly sure about the loan forgiveness part. Two, they're not, the SBA is not exactly clear on what they can and not use that money for. So people are very hesitant. So they're receiving that money and they're holding on to it. The issue is there is a timeline of when you have to spend that money. And it's not necessarily 2 months, it's more like an 8-week timeline, because the goal was to get the economy working again and all of that. But the policymakers did not foresee that people would prefer unemployment over PPP. You know, I think you can get like $600 a week. And then if you're in New York State, there's a COVID-19 for additional $400. So like some people could possibly get, I know they've been having issues at the Department of Labor in terms of the time of, you know, when the funds will be released. But if released, there's some people that could receive $1,200 a week, you know, by receiving unemployment. So you know, there are all these issues that were not thought through when they came up with the PPP package. But I think a lot will be changing. What will change, I don't believe we know.
Right. And I know Teresa's ready to jump in with her assessment of that. I just want to underscore again for MWBEs, which I think is so important, Mary, that you raised the two issues of reassessing your business and being careful with going after the funding right now. And I know Teresa's going to dive straight into being ready for these things, as well as, you know, your employees who might be like, no, I'm good. I'll take that unemployment and stay away from, as we have coined it in our community, the Rona. So Teresa, what is your take on this? And I know I can almost feel where you're going to go.
I mean, Mary hit it right on. You saw me like, yeah. You know, she hit it on the head, is the reassessment. Sometimes we think we need an influx of money, an influx in capital, but we have no structure in place on how we're going to spend that. And I know we're going to talk about that with the 5 C's, but the main point of the PPP is just what it is. It's Paycheck Protection Program. If you have no employees, you are not even paying yourself because your entity formation is not allowing you to pay yourself. You don't qualify. Okay, so we need to, if this is a problem for you, we need to, like Mary mentioned, go back, reassess your business, the plan on how you can now put yourself on payroll so that you can be better able to take advantage of these programs. Whether it comes a 5th or 6th or 10th, you know, you're still not going to be, you know, in the qualifying pool if you do not put your business first, and you have to set it up correctly. It's no more where we're just going to go out and we're going to do things and we don't have business plans, we don't have marketing plans, we don't have financial structures, nothing in place in order for the government, the IRS particularly, to see us as a legitimate business. It sees us as a hobby if you have not structured correctly. And so what Mary mentioned is absolutely 100% on, and I have nothing to add to that, but get your financial house in order. Both personal credit, business formations, all that has to be checked. So do a self-audit during this time. Where else you going, right? Stay home, your business and your finances in place. Absolutely. And make sure if you need help, reach out to someone who can help you. Because this is the time when we come out of COVID and you are in the same position for your business not being in order as we were when we went in, you know, shame on you. Shame on you.
You know what, Teresa, all I can say to that is, I was going to say, Teresa, all I can say to that is amen. Preach it, sister.
And I know Danielle's going to jump in with a question, but I just want to say hello to those who joined us on our live as well. Welcome, Jodia. Welcome, Rosalind. We appreciate you for watching, and thank you for everybody else that's tuning in. Danette, Kim, and Olga, we appreciate you as well. But over to you, Danielle.
Thank you, Stacie. So our next question is, are you familiar with the recent news that Governor Cuomo announced in regards to a $100 million loan fund for landlords and MWBEs? We're going to start with you, Mary, and I believe at the beginning of our program today, you actually mentioned it. So I know you are familiar with it, but if you can share some additional information with our audience, that would be great.
Absolutely. So Pursuit Lending, a community development financial institution, we're a CDFI. We work with small business owners throughout New York State, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So we're going to be working with the state government to actually disburse those loans. So I'm very excited about the loan. And it provides an opportunity for landlords, whose tenants may not have the money to pay their rent and all of that, and provides them extra access to capital. The most important thing about the loan fund is that if you have received PPP or if you have received EIDL, Economic Injury Disaster Loan from the SBA, you do not qualify for the loan fund. So it's for people who, don't qualify for PPP. So lots of solopreneurs, sole proprietors, independent contractors, as well as you know, people who typically would not qualify for EIDL or PPP, provides them that additional access to capital. So I think that's the most important thing. But Pursuit Lending is going to be working with the state government to provide access to capital. So
that's exciting.
Yes, very, very exciting.
And we'll make sure at the end of the show that everybody has the contact information for Mary and Dr. Teresa. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to, before Teresa, you add your comments as well, to say we discussed during last week's session about, as a business owner, how do you determine what's the best course of action? So with the fact that for those who you know, got the PPP or the EIDL, they can't pursue this. When we talk about for solopreneurs and independent contractors, the question still remains, even with this new loan program, is it more beneficial for them to consider, again, unemployment as we discussed, or should they consider this program as well?
Yeah, so if I think for a lot of independent contractors, once again, it's important to speak with your advisor, your accountant, and you know, your people who help you with your business. But looking at the numbers and what's available, if you are an independent contractor, it's actually much better for you to receive unemployment than it is to go after PPP and EIDL and all of that. And first of all, EIDL is closed currently. We don't know when it'll be reopened, but currently the economic injury disaster loan is closed. If you are a solopreneur who maybe plans to transition from your sole proprietorship to maybe like a LLC, LLP, B Corp, S Corp, C Corp, whatever it is, then certainly I'd encourage that you look into, you know, PPP, because I think those types of programs will force you to structure your business, like Dr. Teresa said, and really think about putting yourself or someone on payroll. And I feel like if you're paying someone and you're forced to make a profit so you can pay someone, that's a good thing, because you'll be able to think more about business growth, and you will think of your business in a sustainable way versus a hobby. Like, okay, I can decide who I want to work. You know, you're more aggressive if you're paying someone, because there's responsibility on you to basically think about profit, think about sales, think about your consumer, think about processes and all of that. But if you are an independent contractor, I certainly advise, but once again, like I said, speak with your accountant or your business advisor to see what works. But I think independent contractors should go after unemployment. It makes more sense.
Thank you. Teresa, is there anything you would like to add?
I just want to really address, because you know the landlords, you know, I've been waiting for this, right? So this, you know, I'm real estate all day long it's real estate. So it's important for us to realize that the New York Forward program is targeted to the small businesses, nonprofits, and the small landlords, but the landlords who have seen loss of rental income. It's very important that we, you know, note that, because some tenants are still making payments. They're still making their rental payments. Okay. The other aspect we want to make sure that we say is that these loans are not forgivable in part or whole. They're not forgivable. So there's no part of that that's forgivable, and the loans will need to be paid back over a 5-year term. And with interest, right? And so that's important to know about the New York Forward program, but also for the landlords, again, you know, I'm speaking directly to you, it's targeted for those owners who have residential buildings of 50 units and less. The reason why this is important for me is because I represent the smaller landlords, the smaller property owners, someone who may have a three unit, you know, and live in the bottom unit, but rent out 2, they're still property owners. Okay, so when we talk about investors and real estate property owners, we think about the big giant, you know, 324 unit and all this stuff, but we forget about the smaller property owner. And I've been screaming from the top of my lungs, what about the property owner? I'm a foreclosure defense attorney, okay? So I am very, very in tune with that. So this was good for me. But with that, they're prioritizing the loans for landlords whose properties are in those low to moderate income census tracts, right? So serving the low to moderate income tenants. So that's the other thing that I wanted to like bring home for the landlords, just so that you don't put out your, you know, yay flag yet. And also, you know, just understanding, I think Mary touched upon it, these New York Forward loans are set up for those businesses that are reopening. So
Right.
you have to be a part of the phase 1, 2, 3, whatever. And, if you are not in the process of reopening and you don't have any upfront expenses to apply to the inventory refitting for that new social distancing guidelines and things of that sort that Mary touched on, then that's not for you either. So
Right.
it's not even available to you until you are part of the business that is going to be reopening, because that's what it's for. And the fund opens tomorrow officially, May 26th. Is this the 26th? I don't know when it is. My
Yes.
days are
It is.
I don't know what day it is.
You're
But it opens-
correct.
Yeah.
So can I, as a follow-up to what you just said, Teresa, because you brought up an excellent point, specifically in regards to the landlords, but we also been talking about having the proper structure in place for your business. So with that said, oftentimes when people have investment properties, they put it under a LLC, right?
Right.
If they don't have, if they're operating as individual landlords, they don't have their properties under LLC, they maybe don't have a separate checking account that the rental income is coming in and out and things like that. Again, as we talk about the 5 C's, I want you to please incorporate that into your answers, because I think that is important for those who can potentially pursue this new loan, but they still have to have their ducks in order. So I just want to note that, and as we move forward, you think about that, how you can incorporate that information in with the 5 C's.
Absolutely. And that's where we're going to spend the duration of our conversation, is really getting into the 5 C's. But I want to put in a plug for census. And you touched on a little bit about that in the business census and MWBEs. We need to make sure that as communities, we're completing the government census, right? Because the census is important to count how many businesses, what kind of resources, like everything is attached to the census. It only comes every 10 years. 10 questions will influence the next 10 years. And with this COVID environment, if we can't see how important it is to have resources and access to capital and all the things that we're talking about, that's just a shameless plug for the census. Complete the census. And if you did, help somebody else do it so that our communities have the right resources in place. So getting into the 5 C's, right? And understanding about cash flow. Let's talk about cash flow first and what that means to be cash flow positive. Both Mary and you, Dr. Teresa, you've been talking about the fact that if your business is not in order, your house is not in order, what does that look like? It's a hobby. It's not a business, because a business should be making you money. So let's talk about cash flow first. And I will start with you this time, Dr. Teresa.
Sure. Well, the cash flow falls under the category of capacity, right? So capacity to pay back the loan. So basically what they're assessing when they're looking at that C of capacity is your level of cash flow, and it measures your ability to repay your debt obligation. So the banks and lenders are looking to see if the potential borrowers have enough cash to pay back, what they borrow. So what's in your bank account? What's your levels look like, right? So when you're talking about your profit and loss statements and you're looking at all these things, so if you're gonna borrow $10,000 from the bank, no, let's just say $100,000 from the bank, and you're not running $10,000 or more monthly in your business bank account as deposits, then you're seen as high risk, and how are you going to have the capacity to repay this loan? So dealing with your finances, that deals with the capacity and the capital aspect. They kind of go hand in hand, but you have to really understand that your available cash flow is what they're going to look at. And one of the things that we don't pay attention to when we're running our business is we're taking from our savings, we're doing things or whatever, but we're not documenting anything. Okay, we're not seeing how, when I tell people, when your money goes out the door, okay, you want to have a date when it's going to return, and when it knocks on the door, it better bring back some friends called profits. Okay, so whenever I'm releasing any funds, whenever I'm purchasing something, whenever I'm investing in something, there has to be some anticipated date of return on your profit and loss statement. When you spent that, what are you going to now say that you're expecting this return, or whatever the case may be? So your capacity is basically your level of cash flow, and the assessment for the lenders is really just assessing your ability to repay them. So that's really the basic area, and I'll let Mary really touch on the specifics on the MWBE aspect of it.
Mary, before you do that, when you answer, can you also, to build upon what Teresa just discussed, talk about debt service coverage ratio? I know it's like a 1.25 for certain lenders. So if you could discuss that, because then people can better understand what goes into the underwriting process, and not only that they have a net profit is very important, but that there's a ratio attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so the debt service ratio is actually a little bit complicated. There's a math formula that goes into it. So I'm not sure if I would, I feel like I need a PowerPoint presentation to do that, just so I don't confuse people. But yeah, I think it's something that's taken into consideration when lenders are making a decision. Cash flow is very, very important and very crucial, certainly. Because lenders love, like people always say, people who don't need money are the ones who usually get the money. Because lenders love to trust that you're going to pay them back. And at the end of the day, it's really about the trust. And one of the ways that they trust your entity, especially if they don't know you personally, is by looking at your numbers. So we receive probably 10,000 loan applications in a day. And maybe out of the 10,000, we trust 5. So how do you ensure that when a lender is looking at your application, you can develop that trust? And one of the ways that we do that is by looking at your financial documents. And cash flow is one of them. Your cash flow, your balance sheet, and your profit and loss statement.
And Mary, the other question I have for you, and Teresa, you can answer this as well, is as a business owner, how do you balance ensuring that you're showing net profits, especially when you're thinking about the growth of your business,
right,
so that you can take advantage of access to capital and tax liability? And I think oftentimes business owners, they think more about the tax liability, and then they may show no profit or even a loss. And then you have a situation like coronavirus that happens and they need capital and they can't access that resource.
Right. I think it's important for a lot of small business owners to constantly reach out to their bookkeepers and accountants and business advisors. Because what we find, especially as it pertains to a lot of MWB businesses, is that a lot of people just apply because they need it right now. The issue is you can't just go to the doctor right now for a surgery. There are several steps you have to take to get that surgery. You have to do several tests. They have to check your insurance. They have to do all these different things. So I feel like a lot of small business owners treat lenders like they're the emergency room. But we are not the emergency room. We're sort of the preventative healthcare. So you should always take the necessary steps by constantly reaching out to your accountant, your bookkeeper, checking in. How are your numbers? Building the trust, building relationships with your bankers, with, CDFIs, and trying to imagine yourself needing the money before you actually need it. I feel like that's the best way to be proactive about your financials. But like I said, everyone's situation is different, and and every industry is really different. Like, right now we're talking about debt equity, but there are some people who can raise funds from investors and receive money that way if you have access to investors. If you have access to your alumni networks, you can raise funds from that. So lending or giving someone a loan, the way that we do it in the traditional sense is not the only way to get funding from your business. There are crowdfunding sources. There are, raising money from family and friends, even during this difficult times. There are people who are still able to close Series A, in Silicon Valley and all that different things. I think it all boils down to your access to networks and access to the information that that you're looking to have.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's so much packed into what you were both sharing about the cash flow and just looking at your numbers. And a whole nother show is how to repair it, because most businesses have gone through a challenging moment where the numbers aren't right. So it's not about concentrating on what's not right. It's start where you are and fix it so that you can be in position. So with that being said, I'm going to double up on personal credit and business credit and have you both just speak to that when we're talking about these 5 C's, because there's some repair that needs to happen. Clearly, we have some companies that are thriving because that's what they focus on.
Yes.
Credit repair. So what is the importance for MWBEs, which is something that not only affects them during this COVID time, but it affects all MWBEs when you're talking about bigger contracts and going after opportunities. So I'll come back to you, Dr. Teresa, and tell us a little bit about the personal and business credit that you should be aware of as part of this foundational reassessment that we're talking about for MWBEs.
Well, one, thank you for that, because this is like, all right, I'm credit, okay, I'm like, ready.
I've been waiting for that question.
But in all seriousness, the 5 C's relate to whether we're talking about personal or whether we're talking about business. So I'm going to attack it by dealing with the character first, right, which is one of the C's. And that is dealing with, measuring, your trustworthiness, right, your reliability as a borrower, whether it's personal or business, right? So lenders are going to evaluate your credit score, your credit history, your bankruptcies, your foreclosures, your judgments, how you handled your debt obligations. So on the personal front, on a consumer credit report, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at your payment history, which is a big 35%, and they're looking at your utilization, how you actually utilize the actual credit that you do have. That's 30%. So we're talking about the biggest chunks is how you pay and how you utilize what you have. And so that capacity of cash flow we talked about relates into that capacity, because that goes with the actual utilization. Right? And then you have the capital, which is, your level of debt, how you use the cash that you have, and how are you measuring, the equity that you have, so that the lower your leverage, which is a positive thing, is a good thing in both business and personal. So it's hard to talk about business credit until we talk about personal credit, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And your credit report is an actual indication of who you truly are. Okay. And I know that there are errors, and I know, but everything's not an error. Okay. So I know that there are errors, and we do have to talk about restoring and repairing. But first, in hindsight, when we look back at our credit, because the conditions right now, and that's another C, right, in the capacity, we have to realize that the economy can shift, and how that affects you as, a borrower is very important. But in your plan, you would have planned for such economic conditions, right? The economic environment, your market, your industry, things of that sort is about conditions. And then you as an individual, what about your job? What about the industry? What is the likelihood that if I lose my job, I can find another one? These things are all things that you need to pay attention to when you're talking about personal credit and business credit. And I know that's a lot, but it all boils down to what Mary mentioned as far as strategizing. When I tell people, when I talk to them about personal and business, I tell them that everything you do has a financial report tied to it. Your household has a profit and loss statement. Okay, as an individual, you have a profit and loss statement. How you manage your household may be an indication on how you will manage your business. Okay, so you need to pay attention on how you're running your household, your personal finances, before you have someone trust you. Say, trust me, I messed up here, but trust me, give me money. It's not going to work that way. So we have to pay attention on how we're doing our business and our financial personal lives, so that we can combine the two and build a true character of who we truly are in both personal and business, Dr. Stacie.
I love that. I mean, there's so much packed into that response. I'm like, the show is almost, I'm like, wait, we have so much. We might have to beg and plead to bring you guys back again, because there is just so much to go into. But Mary, I know you're sitting over there like, yeah, we can see you. We know you're jumping up and down. So we're going to let you talk about that piece, and then we're going to round it off because you both kind of touched on character and collateral. So we'll get to that. But I know you have some words, Mary, on the personal and the business credit to add on to what Dr. Teresa was.
Dr. Teresa, said everything that I needed to say, to be really honest. Unfortunately, in the lending space, I see a lot of MWBEs be affected by really terrible credit scores, than people from a different background. That's a trend that I've noticed. So people from, lower income neighborhoods, MWBEs, and I think it's because they're spending so much time bootstrapping. They're putting together all their resources, using all the credit cards that they have. Instead of paying rent, they're putting it into their business, so they're really bootstrapping, trying to find that financing, trying to keep the business sustainable, versus people who can just either go to a bank to get the money, who have the collateral because they have homes, or people who, have access to networks that are needed to get that financing. As a result of that bootstrapping, it really it really destroys the credit for a lot of MWBEs, which in turn can affect, the lending opportunities that they could possibly have in the future, now or later on. So I think it's important that as you're bootstrapping, to really think about the reality of your situation, really make sure that you're paying your rent on time, that you are, paying those credit card bills. I mean, $60 plus 24% APR and interest and all of that, if you owe $60, can easily balloon to $300 and $500, and it really goes from there. And before you know, you're just like, I can't pay this anymore. So I think it's important to really think about, yes, you want to start a business. Yes, you really want to make an impact in your community. Yes, you want to hire people, but it's important to really think about the reality of your situation and really say, what can I do to keep this business going and also pay my bills on time? But yeah, I think I agree with a lot of the things Dr. Teresa said, but credit is so, so crucial, so important for MWBs, especially for those who may not have access to the networks, like resources, information, and the family and friends that can sometimes help some people grow their businesses. I mean, if you look at the trends of entrepreneurs, people had parents, give them $500,000 to start their businesses. Some people are able to pool resources where, their alumni networks can raise $65,000 for them to start their businesses. Some people's family and friends can give them 1.2 million. Starting a business with 1.2 million and with someone who's using a $500 credit cards are two different things. So those are some realities that we have to really think about. But more importantly, I think a lot of MWBs need to work hard to ensure that their credit is protected.
Absolutely. I mean, both of you have said so much, and I know our audience is listening. You can type in your questions if we get a chance. We have a little bit before our show ends, but there's a lot more to talk about. And the reality is, I mean, I've had challenges in business. I know I'm not the only one. And as you said,
right,
you can go through these places, but it's not about the fact that you've had a misstep or you had a challenge because you didn't get the $1.2 million inheritance. So you had to bootstrap to get started. It's actually figuring out, well, where am I now? And what can I use access to information? That's why this show is so important from the ground up. When you at the bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. So this is real-time issues with real-time solutions. So we know the majority of what both of you are seeing within the MWBE space is lack of credit scores that are applicable or cash flow. These 5 C's are issues. So we can't act like they don't exist, but how can we now correct it? And that's something that we'll be talking about, how to bring some more of those solutions to MWBE so that you can get your 5 C's in order. And you have experts like Mary and Dr. Teresa that can offer those resources as well as advice and connect you with that information. So let's round out the conversation on the 5 C's. So you've touched on all 5. We've spoken about character, which really fits into what people are looking at, and access and having collateral. You're building that so you can become cash flow. as we close out, I want both of you to give your contact information to our audience, but just share one thing, one hope, because there might be somebody listening like, okay, I checked every single box they talked about. Oh my gosh, I can't get PPE. I can't do anything, like I'm going under. And we don't want you to feel as if the world is ending. We want you to be hopeful that once you have access to information, once your mind is expanded, it can't go back to its original form, so you can make better choices and better decisions. So as you close out, how can they contact you and give us some hope? What can someone do if they're in that situation? So Mary, we'll start with you.
Sure.
Okay.
So our company website for Pursuit Lending, like I said, Pursuit is a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. We offer financing options to businesses throughout New York State, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So if you visit our website, pursuitlending.com, you can also email me at Olushoga, which is my last name, at pursuitlending.com. I'm more than happy to speak with you on the phone, to reach out any way that I can help. I provide consulting to small business owners. I think if it's anything that I can say that is positive, is to just survive. It's a very tough time out there. We don't know. The World Health Administration is already talking about a second wave of the pandemic. We don't know if it's gonna make the lockdown extended. We don't know how many more people are going to die. So it's a very scary time for everyone. And we've never been in this situation before. So just survive. Take good care of your health, your mental health. Strategize, re-strategize, take a deep breath, go for yoga, meditation, whatever it will take. But more importantly, be positive and survive. I think that's what I can say, because if you can survive the pandemic in good health, you can do anything else after that. But God forbid, if you don't survive, you can't think about your business. So I think it's important to take good care of your health, your mental health, and start from there first, and everything else will take care of itself.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much for that. And that is so true. And Dr. Teresa Martin, Esquire.
Yes, I will say that, the CIA that I talked about last, right, being a part of the CIA club, right? So always focusing on your credit. So wherever you are now, just work on it. Remember, I started everything that I have right now started from a 437 credit score.
See, they didn't know that. I knew we were going to touch on that, but they didn't know that. They didn't know where you're coming from, girl.
Okay, that was after 9/11. Okay, so I went from a 780 to a 437. I couldn't go to the bank to get money without a gun. It was crazy. Okay, so you can do it too. So 437, if I can do it, you can do it. So that's the C. The I, working on your business income. Wherever you are, just figure out a way that you can streamline your business income. And then the A is the assets. Take an inventory of what assets you have. Guess what? If you have a 401k sitting there, find out how much you can roll over, and you can get lending based on 100% of your rolloverable amount. Okay, so you can actually fund your own business. So there are certain things that you can actually do, so you don't have to feel as though there's nothing I can do. But I just want to let you know, 437, just put that on your window, 437, okay? So yes, there is a lower score, 300, so I wasn't at the bottom, but 437 was bad enough.
I didn't know that until last year, actually, that even 400 existed. I thought it stopped at 500.
Crazy. So I'm just letting you know. Now, that's not where you want to go, but I came out of 9/11. So that was another issue where I had to pivot, right? So all I'm saying is it's possible. All you have to do is stay connected to, from the ground up, right? And networks like this, and stay in the conversation. That's what I'll tell you to do. Build your network, build your circle. Like Dr. Stacie says, build your front row and make sure it's people that you value so you can, move on to the next level. It's enjoyyourlegacy.com, enjoyyourlegacy.com, and you can reach me at tmartin@enjoyyourlegacy.com.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. I don't want this show to end, but we are at the end of our episode 3 of From the Ground Up Real-Time Issues with Real-Time Solutions for MWBEs. Please share this if it was a blessing to you. It can be a blessing to someone else. We also are loading it up on our YouTube channel, and we'll share those links with you. But I'll let Danielle close us out for today. It's truly been a pleasure. What a great way to come back from a holiday weekend and just get focused on what really matters so that we can add value to the marketplace. And Queen Strategy, that's what we're doing, and we hope that you follow suit. So over to you, Danielle.
So I just want to say that I hope that you found this information that Mary and Teresa provided to be a great resource for you. But always remember, knowledge is power, but wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. So if you are not taking this great information and utilizing this webinar as well as Mary and Teresa as resources, then shame on you. We will continue to show up, but we ask of you, because again, I shared with you, we are your partner. We want you to show up as well. But most importantly, we are thinking about how you can survive in this moment, but we want to position you to thrive in the near future. So we are, again, your partners, and we hope to see you for webinar number 4 next Tuesday at 9:00 a.m.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.